Serious, what is a seemingly normal photo that has a disturbing backstory? This is the photo Kurt Diemberger took after his companion, the illustrious alpinist Hermann Buhl, fell into the abyss on the Himalayan mountain Chagalisa. Buhl was walking behind Diemberger and momentarily left the trail, after which he fell through an overhanging cornice. He remains in the ice. The leading image on Franklin Delano Floyd's Wikipedia page, a father and his daughter posing for a family photo. In actuality, the little girl is Floyd's stepdaughter, Suzanne Marie Savakis, who he'd kidnapped around 1974, when Suzanne was under 10 years old. He would go on to raise her as his daughter, putting her through high school under several pseudonyms, then have a son with her in 1981 and marry her in 1989, under the name Tanya Hughes. By 1990, Tanya/Suzanne had decided to leave Floyd and take her son, Michael, with her. In April of that year, she was found beaten and bruised on the side of a highway and subsequently died in hospital. Michael went into foster care and was adopted by a loving family, only to be kidnapped by Floyd in 1994 and to never be seen again. Floyd was arrested in late 1994. The news about his late second wife being his kidnapped stepdaughter didn't come out until 2014. Someone rightly pointed out that Michael is not Floyd's biological son. This was only discovered when DNA testing was performed as part of Michael's adoption in 1994, when he was 4 to 5 years old. Presumably, up until that point, Floyd had reason to believe he was the biological father. Photos of his were found that depicted sexual exploitation of Suzanne/Tanya from the age of 4. This isn't as gruesome as some of the others, but I always thought this guy looked more like a male model than an assassin. Lewis Powell was a co-conspirator of John Wilkes Booth, and he attempted to assassinate William Henry Seward, the U.S. Secretary of State. This is a colorized digital restoration of one of his photos. I guess the photo is only seemingly normal if you don't notice the cuffs. It would make sense if he were a model. Everyone knows that John Wilkes Booth was an actor, but really he was the actor. Also, he came from a famous acting family. Let's just say Charlie Sheen goes on to commit a horrible assassination. It's kind of like that. And how does he expect to hide? A better comparison might be the Barrymore/Drew family, but that's reaching pretty far back too. This old photo of mountaineers from 1924. The men in the picture are George Mallory, left, the greatest mountaineer of the early 20th century, and his climbing partner Sandy Irvine, right, at their advance camp on Everest. 2 days later they would attempt the summit and disappear without a trace. This picture, warning for non-graphic mummified human remains, especially puts the last one in context for me. Those are Mallory's remains, found in 1999. The same man in both pictures, 75 years apart. Irvine's body is still missing. Evidence is inconclusive whether they made the summit before their deaths. The wind and weather have degraded the clothes. Remember, he died 100 years ago, so clothing is all natural fibers, while the same freezing temperatures and low oxygen have preserved the body. I just started reading Into Thin Air by John Krakauer, and there's some cool history at the beginning about how Everest was traversed and mapped in the early 20th century. Including quite a bit about Mallory and Irvine. Great timing on these pics, appreciated. Crazy to me that these guys just went up there out of curiosity to give it a shot. Like I won't even go to the grocery store if it's not grocery day, smiley face. He's the Vancouver. This is it. Guy, right? If I recall correctly, he was the first person to report the explosion, before being killed by the pyroclastic blast. Yeah, he got pictures of the explosion as it was just erupting. He knew he couldn't make it to safety, so he decided to document as much as he could before. Well, the inevitable. And his camera and footage were found afterwards. He had basically been in the fetal position, hugging his camera bag to his chest/tummy, and wrapped his body around it to protect it. If memory serves, the only pics of the volcano exploding were preserved by him after taking the photos balled up with the camera in the center to protect it, as he knew he'd die, but at least he could save the pics. That was actually a different guy, an amateur photographer who had trekked into the area to snap some photos of the heaving mountain. He snapped his final photos, slid the camera into his leather bag, and curled up on top of it. There was, called St. Helens, made in 1981. I watched it as a kid, and I will always remember the character of Johnston addressing like a council and saying, "Do you know what will happen if you are on that mountain when it erupts? You'll melt. This looks like a stock photo of a violin. The instrument in that picture is the Hartley violin. It was owned by Wallace Hartley, the bandmaster and lead violinist on the Titanic. It was the one he carried with him on the night the ship sank. Survivors reported seeing Hartley and his band on the deck of the ship during the sinking, playing to calm passengers as they boarded the insufficient lifeboats. This is the exact instrument he played. Hartley and every member of the band died in the sinking. We have his violin because at some unknown point before his death, Hartley tucked the violin back into its monogrammed case for safekeeping. That's how it was found, floating in the debris field, by one of the ships sent to recover bodies from the wreck. They were able to identify it as Hartley's because of an engraved brass plate, and it was returned to his fiancée, who kept it until her death. Her family authenticated it and sold it for $1.6 million to an organization that collects Titanic artifacts. One of my flatmates at university said Wallace Hartley was one of her ancestors. Kind of sad to hear that someone with such character was a relative of yours and died during such a terrible event. You may need to qualify that highest price sold at auction more. The most expensive musical instrument sold at auction is the Lady Blunt Stradivarius violin and was sold at £9,808,000, $15,875,800, by Terracio Auctions, USA, in London, UK, on June 20, 2011. I've heard that too, but then it wasn't actually listed on the report of the personal effects found on his body, and those were pretty detailed, down to the amount of change he had in his pockets. I can't pinpoint the origin of the claim that he had it on him. There have been multiple reports from survivors the band played music while the ship was sinking, yes. There have been some mixed accounts if they actually played Nearer My God to Thee, or if they played it as their last song, but as far as the records show they were there playing, probably with the intent of keep people from panicking, which often only makes things worse. Yep, definitely a historical fact. The thing is that many survivors claim they played Nearer My God to Thee and others say they didn't hear that song played, but that became the song that people associate with the band playing as the ship sank, and it's the one that's featured in both Cameron's film and A Night to Remember. Another specific song survivors reported hearing was Vivaldi's Autumn. Considering the ship had a good hour plus between lifeboats starting to load and the deck becoming too tilted for musicians to play, it's entirely probable they did several pieces. I've always assumed they did Autumn and Nearer My God to Thee and probably some other music no one specifically noted. Nearer My God to Thee is just so damn atmospheric, it's the one that sticks in people's minds when they hear about it. Makes for a better movie scene. Unlike with pinning a murder on a hero like he did with Murdoch. Murdoch was the reason any men in the boats were saved, because unlike the guy in charge of the boats on the other side who took the orders as women and children, only Murdoch let any men to board as long as they were close and there were enough seats. Probably explains why he had launched multiple boats by the time the other guy launched one. And Cameron only gave a sorry you feel that way but honestly fuck you and it's actually your fault apology to Murdoch's descendants after years of pressure and legal action. I remember moving to a small suburb town of Raymore, Missouri, just 15 minutes south of Kansas City. It was just a couple months after moving there they found John Robinson's storage unit with 55-gallon drums with the corpses inside. I would ride my bicycle by them every day. Raymond Cabalfin Jr., 19, was filmed leaping into the American River near Sacramento on May 11, 2017 after hiking with friends, but he was overcome by strong currents and icy water and died. I still remember this 4 years later. Very sad, he was just out with friends having fun. R.I.P. Ray, I didn't know you but will always remember you. There are photos from the video, but the video shows the situation. He was 30 feet under. How long does that take on average to swim up from? I mean geez. This sucks. Misjudged how long he could hold his breath. Edit to say I've been corrected in the comments, it was scuba, free diving, science shit, not lung user error, and just didn't make it back up. Fuck. Imagining those moments for the woman. Waiting. Where is he? He just swam away, he should be here any moment to hear my yes to his proposal. What's taking so long? And then what? She goes up to the surface from the room and sees his body? Or is it out of sight down below somewhere? Like fuck. The logistics of these moments are what make it real for me. A kid went missing hiking a spot on the Big Island of Hawaii. He texted some pictures of the scenery while he was hiking. After he never showed up at home, his family noticed somebody lurking in bushes in the photos he sent. My family that live in Hawaii said the spot is illegal to hike at, so it's not like it would have been a heavily populated trail. More info, and the photo in question. There's a similar though happier story of a woman who fell while hiking and ended up face down just out of sight of the trail. She likely would have died if not for another hiker a few hours later who took a picture of their friend and noticed a blot of red hair in the background. This photo of nightclub kiss posted on Facebook by one of the DJs. Later that night, 245 people would die and more than 680 plus would be injured when the band Gurizada Fandanguera lit a flare that ignited the flammable acoustic foam in the ceiling. There wasn't enough emergency exits, it was overcrowded by hundreds, and then the security guards trapped the victims inside in an attempt to organize the crowd. The responsible are still unpunished. This picture of a bed in a child's room. Sad story of a missing 4-year-old later found dead from asphyxiation wedged at the foot of her bed between mattress and frame. You can barely make out the little bulge of her body in that pic, but you can. The picture of the bed ran on the news and the mom did interviews while sitting on it. There's more graphic pics of what it looked like with the blankets removed and the body uncovered, but I'm gonna go ahead and not link that. Her body wasn't found after professionals and dogs searched the room, it was found once the smell got bad enough. Also, I'm pretty sure I read someone slept in the bed during that time, but not sure on that. I'm sure I'm being an idiot, but I just can't understand how they didn't find her. Like, from my Googling of where she must have been, wouldn't they have seen her when they lifted the duvet cover? Especially if someone was sleeping in there. If I recall correctly, Bart had flunked out of college, but his parents still believed he was attending and even giving him money for tuition, which he was blowing on booze, etc. They were out to dinner to celebrate his graduation. He didn't even pull the trigger, he got his friend to do it. Bart also told the cops the shooter was black to keep suspicion away from his friend.